place the amendment on the bill for discussion?
Sir, please.
Without objection, we're ready to vote on Amendment 4024 going on to House Bill 1237. All in favor, please say aye. Opposed, no. If you'd like to be recorded as a no, please see the clerk. The bill's now amended. You're recognized, Speaker Zachary, on House Bill 1237 as amended.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman of the committee. Members, this bill prohibits the exclusion of persons from membership on state regulatory and health boards on the basis of race, color, ethnicity, and national origin. Prohibits the board from operating under race-based policies pertaining to their composition. Most people know our state is being sued after the June 9th, 2023 Supreme Court ruling that struck down affirmative action. Students for Fair Admissions, Inc. v. President and Fellows of Harvard College. The Supreme Court, in their majority opinion, ruled that that this violates the 14th Amendment. No state can deny equal protection under the law to any persons within its jurisdictions. Justice Roberts, who wrote the majority opinion, stated that distinctions between citizens solely because of their ancestry are by their very nature odious to a free people whose institutions are founded upon the doctrine of equality. And many of you know that we have had a very, very difficult time because of the quotas on our board of fulfilling those boards. I've talked to numerous commissioners about it. So this will alleviate numerous issues. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I'll be glad to answer your questions.
You've heard the explanation of the sponsor. Are there any questions for the sponsor? Representative Miller, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, as I read House Bill 1237, I come to the conclusion that House Bill 1237 actually prohibits the exclusion of persons from membership on state regulatory and health-related boards on the basis of race, color, ethnicity, and national origin. Prohibit such boards from establishing or operating under race-based policy pertaining to their composition, creates a private cause of action against a board and its officers, employees, and agents for such practices, removes requirements that appointing authorities strive to ensure certain boards and commissions are represented by members of racial minorities. That's how I interpret your legislation, Mr. Chairman. Zachary, am I correct?
Mr. Speaker, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Miller, you repeated the talking points that I gave, so you're correct in the talking points. But in terms of the legislation itself, again, as I mentioned, we're being sued because our board, because of the policy of the boards, they no longer align with the 14th Amendment as ruled by the Supreme Court on June 9th of 2023. So this legislation is necessary for a couple of different reasons. One, our board should have the best possible people on those boards. That should be based on merit. It should not be based on somebody's race, sex, gender identity, whatever it may be. It should be based on the merit, so that way we get the best possible people. And I would challenge you and say that my guess would be if a surgeon was performing heart surgery on you, you would want the best possible surgeon, whether he was red, yellow, black, or white. And so on these boards, we need the best possible people serving. And so again, we're aligning ourselves with the most recent ruling of the Supreme Court. So mine and your opinion really is irrelevant because again, the Supreme Court has made this ruling that we're not aligned with the 14th Amendment. And so that's the reason for the legislation.
Before I recognize Representative Miller again, if you have a sign out there, please keep it down below so the people behind you can see. If you can't do it, then we're just going to ask you to leave. Okay. Representative Miller, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In 2023, Supreme Court ruled on the issue of affirmative actions through two cases. Students for Fair Admissions versus President and Fellows of Harvard College, SFFA versus University of North Carolina. The claim that House Bill 1237 is needed to prevent lawsuits against state departments and regulatory as results of decision in both of these cases is far from logical. First, the facts of Supreme Court case and of the potential lawsuits regulatory and healthcare boards face are highly untrue. The Supreme Court explicitly dealing with the admission process in universities, not the compositions of state boards. Therefore, it cannot be said that House Bill 1237 must be passed to fall in line with 2023 decisions by the Supreme Court. And when this particular bill is attempting to target was not at all addressed in the majority decision of the courts. Yet each of our boards has clear and measurable objectives, and almost all regulatory healthcare related boards have no quotas or race conscious policies currently. So once again, House Bill 1237 is misguided in its assertion, and it is bringing the state into alignment with the 2023 SC decision on affirmative action. Mr. Chairman, I just voted for 35, resolution 36. 35 was white male, 36 white female, 39 white male, 38 white female, 37
Miller.
white male. But and I'm saying that was diversity.
Representative
think.
Miller,
Yes, sir.
if you got a question in there, please ask the
I'm
question.
getting to the question because I've asked the question to Chairman early on.
Okay, he's not a chairman, he's the deputy speaker, so address him as such.
Deputy Speaker. Mr. Deputy Speaker, why do we think we need this bill at this point?
Deputy Speaker, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Miller, thank you. And I do appreciate the back and forth. I do. I respect you. I appreciate the back and forth and the questions. Representative Miller, even if there wasn't a Supreme Court case, putting racial quotas on anything that we do, I believe is wrong. I believe in the last committee, you referred to it as diversity, equity, and inclusion. I think some people would refer to it as division, exclusion, and indoctrination. And so I think whether the Supreme Court had that ruling or not, this bill is appropriate because we need the best possible people representing our boards. And so again, we can disagree. And I have all these notes here that I'm not going to bore the committee with regarding the follow-up from the Supreme Court ruling and how it impacts and ripples down. But the bottom line is remove the Supreme Court case. That's fine. We need the best possible people on our boards, and those boards need to be based on merit. And again, it's important to remember, members, this does nothing to violate Title VII of the Civil Rights Act, which ensures that and prohibits discrimination based on race, color, religion, sex, or national origin. So again, I would just challenge any member on this board. If you have somebody flying your plane, working on your car, performing surgery on you, where you want the best possible person, you don't care what they look like or what their sex is. And so what we're saying on these boards, which we are having a very difficult time filling and have, as I've talked to multiple commissioners, one who was actually involved with board appointments years ago, he literally could not find certain people to serve on certain boards. Some of our boards are undermanned because of that. So again, members, the board appointments that we make should be based on merit. And so I stand behind the legislation and stand behind the intent. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Miller, you have a follow-up?
Well, just one follow-up. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for indulging me on this. Deputy Speaker, you've mentioned several times in your comments, the most qualified, the most qualified, the most qualified. And I agree with you on that. My question to you, do you know of any regulatory board, a health board with an African-American or a non-white that's on that board currently that's qualified?
Deputy Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Larry, Representative Miller, I'm going to call you Larry. Representative Miller, and I try to say this with all sincerity, in terms of the conversation regarding the makeup of a board, the makeup of this body, the last thing I'm going to look at is race. I simply don't look at that for a race perspective, black or white, whatever it may be. It's just who's the best possible person that we can put on those boards based on those qualifications. So in terms of the makeup on the board, how many are black, how many are white or Asian or whatever it may be, I have no idea, sir, what the makeup is of those boards.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Miller.
I know,
Representative Miller, please.
Yes, sir. Thank you. This is exactly what your bill is representing, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Powell.
Thank you. I've got multiple concerns, and obviously I'm opposed to the bill. But when you speak to health the composition of health-related boards. I think it's important to note that we do have communities that face certain health diseases and other things, disorders, because, for example, sickle cell, right, would be an example. We know that some diseases, there might be higher prevalence among certain racial demographics, and for creating diversity, it's very important. I just find that, you know, and I know you're using this example of a pilot, a surgeon, and all those things. We're talking about a board where you can reach out to the community and try to create diverse opinions, where those opinions are racial, where those opinions are people that come from different geography. We seem to value geography in our state and making sure that we have all 3 grand divisions represented. But now we don't want to represent, have the ability to have different minority groups that are represented and a part of that. And I think specifically when it comes to health boards, you know, we should really factor that into and take that into account, because that is important to make sure that we are dealing with all health outcomes. Because what ends up happening is if you don't factor those in, and you have people that don't come from those communities that don't understand that. I mean, I can say that, you know, I'm not as familiar with, say, the disease I mentioned, like sickle cell, is some of my African-American Black colleagues might be, because it's not prevalent in my community. So I think when you take that away, you're really limiting the diversity of opinions, experience, and knowledge. And that gives me great pause. And just one last thing, and I know we're talking about a lawsuit, but you know, I've never shied away, and I don't think you've ever shied away from being worried about a lawsuit. I don't care who sues us. I don't think we should go out and create public policy just because we're scared somebody sued us. We're putting the cart before the horse here. We're talking about a affirmative action case dealing with colleges. I don't think that is applicable to boards, but I want to see, and I think it's important to have boards in our state, in our cities, in our counties that are representative of taking into account racial and other demographics. So why do you think that health outcomes should not be, that specifically dealing with health, that's not a factor at all?
Deputy Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative, I don't disagree. I think we absolutely need diversity of thought and opinion on these particular boards. And I don't think we're not excluding anyone. We're simply saying that if we can't fill positions on a board, and again, it's not just about race, it's also about gender being included on these boards. There are literally some boards we simply cannot fill because of the requirements in certain geographic areas. And so in terms of diversity of opinion, diversity of thought, absolutely we should have those. And I'm just going to trust the people who make those appointments, our speakers, our governor, to provide the most diverse options possible that give us the best possible outcomes. And again, it should be based on merit, not based on someone's sex or ethnicity.
Representative Chisholm.
Oh, I have fault.
Thank you, Chairman. To the sponsor, I noticed in the bill, we mentioned a lot about affirmative action so far, but I noticed in the bill it only mentions color, skin color, and ethnicity. But you know, in affirmative action, it covered a lot of other groups too. Why in this bill did it just mention color?
Deputy Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If you could point me to what you're referencing, Representative Chisholm, within, because again, this bill just deletes the various sections. Where are you referencing in particular?
Representative Chisholm.
So I'm actually reading the summary of the bill right now. And when I read the actual bill, it says racial minority. I'm scrolling down a little bit more, it says racial minority. So in the bill, it really singles out racial minorities. But, you know, again, affirmative action, it covered women, people with disabilities, and et cetera, et cetera. So why in this bill is it just racial minorities?
Deputy Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for the question, Representative Chisholm. I take you to section 6 that does reference race and also gender.
Representative Chisholm, do you have a follow-up?
Okay, yeah. So I know this bill is to undo a lot of the affirmative action legislation. But I'm not gonna try to give a history lesson here, but affirmative action was meant to be corrective action based on historically what's happening in our country, and as well as this in our state even. And when affirmative action was put together, it wasn't meant to get people on boards who were unqualified. It was just more or less so that people who don't have a membership to the country club can yet be seen. So diversity is needed. It's diversity of, because with different races, different sexes, you then do have diversity of thought. And I actually brag on the state of Tennessee, where on our boards, we've always had qualified people, regardless of race, gender, and those other things. So the bill just seems like a solution looking for a problem instead of a problem being fixed.
Deputy Speaker, you have a
No
response?
comment. No, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Next on our list is Representative Dixie.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The sponsor of this bill made several comments as we were talking. One is that, he doesn't see color as when he looks at people for whatever reason that it is. But as a Black man, I want you to see my color, because I want you to understand that we're not the same. We have different thought processes. We have different value systems. We have different beliefs. And I believe my value system, beliefs are just as important as yours. But if we don't come together and talk about it, there's no way we'll ever get an understanding. So there is, my colleague from Shelby County said, there's a reason that these were in place, because these boards have to be representative of the communities that they serve. It also pains me, or it's hard for me to believe that you couldn't find any qualified Black people. I'm going to speak for Black people at this moment, that you couldn't find any Black people that are qualified to fill vacant board appointments. That's ridiculous. That's a slap in the face. Maybe they haven't been asked. You know why? Do you know why you can't find somebody that can do that? Because you don't look for them. And if you don't look for them, you definitely won't find them. So I think this
Representative
bill.
Dixie, do you have a question?
Yes, my question is, this bill is unnecessary, it's divisive, and it's hurting. There's no need for it. And I feel that if you pass this bill, we're moving back to where we are, where everything is controlled by white men. How will this bill prevent that from happening? Because if you have white men as the decision makers, they have historically excluded these communities and these people from these boards that you're not even looking for. How will this bill support that?
Before I recognize you, Deputy Speaker, remember, we love to have the guest here, but when you start making noise and stuff that the other members can't hear anything, that's disrupting the thing. So this is a warning to you. Please be a spectator. You're not a participant, okay? Deputy Speaker, you're recognized.
Thank you. And my question would be, how does this exclude anyone that's Black? How does this exclude anyone that's Asian? There is no exclusion within this bill. We're simply saying that everybody is on an even playing field. And when you want to go into white men making this decision, then that just brings in some sort of racist component to this. That's exactly what this does. And
You're right.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, I don't have any further comments related to that. I think the bill speaks for itself. I think the bill moves our boards back to merit. And again, to bring up one particular race over another, again, I believe those comments are completely inappropriate.
Representative Dixie.
I think they're very appropriate. I think that is the intent of it. So we can play word Jenga all we want to, but we know what the intent of this is. So let's just be real and say what it is and stand up. You brought this bill, stand to say what it means and what you really want it to happen, what you really want it want to happen here. And if you didn't answer my question, how does this bill prevent us from going back to that where white men make all the decisions and decide who gets on these boards? And we don't have any way to ensure that other people are included. Tell me how this bill does that.
Deputy Speaker.
Thank you. You tell me how this bill does exclude anybody. This bill doesn't exclude anybody. And if you want to make this about race, that's your prerogative to do so. This bill is based about merit, ensuring we have the best possible people on these boards.
Next on my list is Representative Mitchell.
Yeah, thank you, thank you, Mr. Chairman. In a prior life for a prior governor, I was over boards and commissions. I was responsible for finding all of these people to nominate for all these boards and commissions. We didn't seem to ever have a problem finding all kinds of people wanting to be on these boards and commissions. So I think the problem may be they've narrowed their search to match your bill here currently. But my big problem is a lot of these boards and commissions take disciplinary actions against other Tennesseans. And it kind of, they kind of serve as a jury, and you want to have a jury of your peers, 12 in a box. If you were in a criminal case, well, I think if your license for your profession is up for grabs and your ability to make a living is in jeopardy, you would want to have the same look of that jury. 3 in 10 Tennesseans are not white. 1 in 6 Tennesseans are black. We've got 6.5% of Tennessee are Hispanic now. So, I mean, those folks would like to, these boards and commissions, I mean, it's narrowed down, it's got to be X number from West Tennessee, X number from East Tennessee, X number from Middle Tennessee on a lot of these boards. We always tried to make these boards reflective of this state because that's who they're representing. We would want a cross section of this state. So if someone walked into that board or commission and was standing in front of that board presenting to them, they're looking at what Tennessee is. As the prior speaker from Davidson County kind of said, if it looks like a duck, walks like a duck, and quacks like a duck, this bill is a duck. And you know the reasoning. Thank you.
Deputy Speaker, any response?
Well, Mr. Chairman, this is such an interesting and riveting circle of a conversation. But it's also important to remember that the governor or speakers appoint, and this body, which I am looking at, which is an extremely diverse body, confirms. So these appointments have to come through this body or others up and down this hallway, which then allow for a much deeper vetting process. So we're acting like it's one person that makes the decision and that they are the dictator and can solely make the decisions. We literally just sat through 7 different people with very diverse backgrounds who were confirmed unanimously by this body. So the reality is we're not excluding anyone. Anyone can be put on these boards, and there will be absolutely diversity of all kinds on these boards to best represent the interest of these boards. But this body has a responsibility then to thoroughly vet those appointees and then confirm or deny that confirmation. And so I think that's the beautiful part of our system and the diversity of these committees. Again, confirm or deny those appointments. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Next on the list is Chairman Moon. Turn Moon on.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move previous question.
Previous question has been called. We're ready to vote. So, Madam Clerk, will you please open the board for voting? Has every member voted? Does any member wish to change their vote? Madam Clerk, close the board and announce the vote.
Mr. Chairman, you have 17 ayes, 6 nays.
With a positive vote, your bill moves on to calendar and rules.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee.
Item number 4 is also by Chairman Zachary. He has asked that this be rolled 1 week without objection. It's rolled 1 week. Next up on our list is Chairman Hicks with House Bill 98. We got a proper motion and a second. Chairman Hicks, you are recognized.
Thank you, Chairman and committee. House, let's see here, House Bill 98, it actually includes increased funding for human resources agencies. House Bill 98 will allow the state to increase the maximum state matching funds from 150,000, which it currently is, to 370,000. The maximum funding has not been increased since 2017, and the legislation will also allow local governments to provide additional funding should they choose so.
You have heard the explanation of the sponsor. The question has been called by Representative Mitchell. We're ready to vote on House Bill 98. Moving on to Finance, Ways and Means. All those in favor, please vote on the board. Madam Clerk, open the board for voting. Dog it. Has every member voted? Does any member wish to change their vote? Madam Clerk, close the board and announce the vote.
Mr. Chairman, you have 23 ayes, 0 nays.
Where's this bill going? With a positive vote, this bill will move on to Finance, Ways and Means. We'll jump back to item number 1. Or I'm sorry, Chairman, do you have another bill?
I do.
And what number is that, please?
I think it's the next one, I believe.
6. All right, I apologize. We got a proper motion and second on item number 6, as soon as I find it. Okay, House Bill 479. Chairman Hicks, you are recognized on your bill, sir.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, committee. House Bill 479 is a bill that I'm proud to bring for our Tennessee National Guard service members. The bill enacts the Tennessee National Guard Service Members Medical Readiness Act, which creates within the military department the Tennessee National Guard TRICARE Premium Reimbursement Program to award reimbursement grants to a member of the Tennessee National Guard who meets the reimbursement application requirements established by the adjunct general through written policies and guidelines for reimbursement of a premium paid for individual coverage through the TRICARE Reserve Select Program or dental program.
You've heard the explanation of the sponsor. Are there any questions for the sponsor? Chairman Powers, you're recognized.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, I'm out of order. I just had a group here that I wanted to recognize.
You're
I have
recognized.
My group from Campbell County is here today, the Campbell County leadership. Would you all care to stand up
Please
and
stand
be
up.
recognized? And thank you all for coming. And I'll see you in my office in a few minutes, I hope. Thank you.
Representative McCalman,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Move previous question.
previous question has been called. We're ready to vote on House Bill 479. Moving on to Finance, Ways and Means. All those in favor, please vote yes on the board. Madam Clerk, open the board for voting. Has every member voted? Does any member wish to change their vote? Madam Clerk, close the board and announce the vote.
Mr. Chairman, you have 23 ayes, 0 nays.
Bill moves on to Finance, Ways and Means.
Thank you, Chairman and committee.
All right, we're going to jump back to item number 1, House Bill 1095 by Chairman Doggett. We got a proper motion and second. Chairman Doggett, I do see you have a drafting code. Can you please give it to us?
Yes, sir. Mr. Chairman, committee, good afternoon. I believe that drafting code is 4050.
That is the correct drafting code. We've got a first and a second on the amendment. Would you like us to place the amendment on the bill for discussion?
Yes, please, if you don't mind.
Without objection, all those in favor of amendment number 4051 going on to House Bill 1095, please say aye. Opposed, no. Bill is now amended. You're recognized on your amended bill, Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The bill applies to private special deputies that are employed or compensated by a resort area, resort town management company. These individuals have to be post-certified for the Police Officer Standards and Trainings Commission. They also have to attend their annual in-service that all other certified law enforcement officers have to do. And there are 2 resort towns in our state that these would be applicable to.
You've heard the explanation of the sponsor. Is there any questions? Seeing none, I think we're ready to vote on House Bill 1095. Moving on to calendar and rules. All in favor, please vote yes on the board. Madam Clerk, please open the board. Has every member voted? Does any members wish to change their vote? Madam Clerk, close the board and announce the vote.
Mr. Chairman, you have 22 ayes, 0 nay.
With a positive vote, your bill moves on to calendar and rules.
Thank y'all.
Next on today's agenda is House Bill 1341 by Chairman Farmer. Got a proper motion and second. Chairman Farmer, you're recognized on your bill, sir.
Thank you, members. This bill was brought through by the Secretary of State's office. And what it does is that if someone uses your name or your business's name to affect a fraudulent business filing, so if they file an LLC under your name, right now you'd have to file a petition with the court, spend money, hire an attorney, filing fees, et cetera, to try to get that reversed. Well, the Secretary of State's office has recognized that, and they developed a mechanism to where you can file a complaint with them, and they'll go through the entire process for you. They'll send notice out to the folks that have allegedly filed under your name, and if it turns out to be fraudulent, then they'll be able to reverse that transaction. So it's a real good thing, and just ask for passage.
You've heard the explanation of the sponsor. Are there any questions? Seeing none, we're ready to vote on House Bill 1341. Moving on to calendar and rules. Please vote aye on the board or no if you're against. Madam Clerk, please open the board. Has every member voted? Does any member wish to change their vote? Madam Clerk, you will close the board and announce the vote. Where's this? Calendar and rules.
Mr. Chairman, you have 21 ayes, 0 nays.
With a positive vote, your bill moves on to calendar and rules.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, committee.
Okay, let's see where we're at. Let's jump down to item 8. Is Chairman Grills in?
The elevators are full.
Okay. House Bill 805 by Chairman Grills. You're recognized, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee. This bill requires the state retirement system and local pension funds to divest from entities known to be majority owned by the Chinese.
You've heard the explanation of the sponsor. Are there any questions? Chairman Moon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Move previous question.
Previous question's been called. We're ready to vote on House Bill 805. Moving on to calendar and rules. All those in favor, please vote on the board yes, or if you're against, no. Madam Clerk, open the board. Has every member voted? Does any member wish to change their vote? Madam Clerk, close the board and announce the vote.
Mr. Chairman, you have 17 ayes, 1 nay, and 2 present non-voting.
With a positive vote, House Bill 805 moves on to calendar and rules.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee.
Do I have any other chairman? Chairman Bolso, please come up and I will. What item here? Let's go to item 20. House Bill 346 by Chairman Bolso. We got a proper motion and second. I do see that we have an amendment. Will you please give us your drafting code?
Mr. Chairman, that is 004436.
That is correct. Got a proper motion and second on the amendment. Would you like us to place the amendment on the bill for discussion?
Please, Mr. Chairman, yes.
Without objection, all those in favor of placing amendment 4436 on the House Bill 346, please say aye. Opposed, no. You're now on your amended bill, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, members of the committee. This is a bill that seeks to honor one of this body's former members, John DeBerry, who all of you know as perhaps the greatest orator that we've ever had here in the Tennessee House of Representatives. You have no doubt seen that we have 4 or 5 desks already in our legislative chamber that have plaques on the sides honoring former members who used to use those desks during their service in the General Assembly. This bill, if adopted, would simply add Mr. John DeBerry as a person for whom we are placing a plaque in honor of his distinguished service for more than a quarter of a century. When we were passing this through the Naming and Designating Committee, Representative Leatherwood had an excellent suggestion about including in the bill language that would actually be included on the plaque. And so what you have before you with this amendment, members, is the actual language that we propose be included on the plaque. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I'm ready for any questions.
You've heard discussion on the bill. Is there any questions for the sponsor? Representative Martin.
Thank you, Chairman Ball. So my question is, what is the criteria that, if there's been 4 or 5, I think I heard you say that was, what is the criteria for how this selection is made?
Chairman Bolso.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Martin, the criteria is simply whatever the members of this committee and our body collectively determine is appropriate to honor one of our former members. There are no written objective criteria anywhere. It's simply what this body believes is appropriate.
Representative Martin, follow up. Any other questions for our sponsor? Seeing none, we're ready to vote on House Bill 346. Moving on to Finance, Ways and Means. All those in favor, please vote yes on the board or no against. Madam Clerk, please open the board. Has every member voted? Does any member wish to change their vote? Madam Clerk, close the board and announce the vote.
Mr. Chairman, you have 17 ayes, 2 nays, and 1 present non-voting.
With a positive vote, House Bill 346 moves on to Finance, Ways and Means.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, committee.
Okay, folks. Give me just a second. We're going to go to item number 7, House Bill 357. This is Representative Powers' bill, and he has asked that this be rolled to the Hill. Without objection, we'll roll this bill to the Hill. Going over to item 9 now. Item 9 is House Bill 653 by Representative Hicks. Representative has asked that this bill be rolled 2 weeks. Without objection, House Bill 0653 will be rolled for 2 weeks. Item number 10, House Bill 1405 by Speaker Marsh. The speaker has asked that this bill be rolled 1 week. Without objection, it will be rolled 1 week. Item number 11, House Bill 1173 by Chairman Williams. Chairman Williams has asked that this bill be taken off notice without objection. We'll take it off notice. Item number 12, House Bill 23 by Representative Davis. Proper motion and second. I do see we have an amendment. Can you please give us your drafting code?
Yes, Chairman. So that is 3519.
That is correct. Would proper motion and second on the amendment. Would you like us to place the amendment on the bill for discussion?
Absolutely, it rewrites the bill.
Without
Thank you, Chair.
objection, we're voting on amendment number 3514 going on to House Bill 23. All in favor, please say aye. Opposed, no. Your bill's now amended. You're recognized on your bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So essentially what this bill does is it defines a district. So in terms of when we're using district in language in statute for redistricting purposes or any other purposes, whether a community calls it a ward, a precinct, a region, a district, that definition all means the same thing for district.
You've heard the explanation of the sponsor. Are there any questions? Representative Mitchell.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question, would this have any effect on, like, say here in Davidson County, we have at-large council members. So would it have any effect on some cities? I know some cities, the whole city is the district and they'll vote and the top 3, top 5, whatever vote getters win. So would your legislation have any effect on that?
Representative Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. No, it's just the definition. It's a definition.
Representative Mitchell for follow-up. Any other questions? Representative Carriger.
Thank you, Chairman, and sponsor of the bill. This is just a cleanup bill from what we passed last session. Is this correct?
Representative Davis.
Thank you. Last session, the legislation that I passed only removed an exception in law. And so when I kind of looked at that statute, it didn't have a clear definition of what a district was. And so this just cleans that up and clarifies the definition of a district. So that when we use, other terms, everybody knows we're all talking about district, whether that's an at-large district, whether that's a, specific one, whatever the geography of that district is, it's clarifying that terminology.
Representative Carringer.
Yes, and so I wanted everybody to be aware of that because although we all serve the whole state of Tennessee, every one of our districts, our counties, our cities and all refer, as our sponsor just said, refer to them as districts or wards or whatever. So this is just to clean up that bill that we passed last year and to clarify it. And hopefully we have got everybody on the same page this year. So thank you, sponsor, for bringing this bill. Thank you.
Representative White.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Move the previous question.
Chairman Wright has moved previous question. We're ready to vote on House Bill 23. Madam Clerk, please open the board. Has all members voted? Does any member wish to change their vote? Madam Clerk, close the board and announce the vote.
Mr. Chairman, you have 17 ayes, 2 nays.
House Bill 23 with a positive vote moves on to calendar and rules. House Bill 22 by Representative Davis. Do I have a motion? Got a proper motion and second. Representative Davis, I do see that we have some amendments. Can you please give us the drafting code?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. The amendment which rewrites the bill is 4529.
That is correct. Do I have a motion on the amendment? Proper motion and second on the amendment. Would you like us to place the amendment on the bill for discussion?
Yes, Mr.
Without
Chair.
objection, we're voting on amendment number 4529 going on to House Bill 22. All in favor, please say aye. Opposed, no. The bill is now amended. You're recognized on your amended bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, committee. And so in 23, we passed legislation that codified public comment. We were one of the few states in the country that did not do that. And since that time, I'm coming back to you. The legislation that we passed required that the community was able to speak to items that were on the agenda. And we wanted to do that to make sure that people didn't come and talk about something that was not under the purview of that governing body. So you didn't want folks to come and talk about their sewer or issues with, their utilities at the school board meeting. But now what has happened is we have some folks that are letting me know that essentially they're being restricted from being able to speak and redress their government because the items on the agenda are very narrowly focused. And so it's crafted in a way not to allow those citizens to speak. And that's not the majority of people, the majority of governing bodies across our state absolutely, overwhelmingly in practice prior to codification and then also in principle adhere to our First Amendment rights and want to hear from our constituency. And so this is just to ensure that people have the ability to redress their government. The only thing that we're changing with this law is we're asking that those individuals be able to speak to things that are germane to that body. So I know in Knox County, one of the things that we do is we have public comment that is kind of open topics at the very end of the meeting prior to the adjournment of the meeting. Those individuals have to call in to the commission secretary, sign up, let the commission know specifically what they're there to speak to, and they're limited in the number of people that are signed up to speak, and then also limited in their time. And so I'm not changing any of those things that those locals have. That's under their local control to determine the time, the manner, and the place of how those individuals speak and for how long.
Representative Warner, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Representative, for bringing this bill. I think it's a great bill, but could you just please clarify that the locals can still will control the time limit and what's to be spoken about?
Representative Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'll read from what is currently in statute. And so that's 844-112. And it says that the governing body may put reasonable restrictions on the period for public comment, such as the length of the period, the number of speakers, the length of time that each speaker will be allowed to provide comment. The governing body may require a person to give notice in advance of the desire to offer the comments at a meeting. The governing body shall take all practical steps to ensure that opposing viewpoints are represented fairly if it comes to that. And so sometimes you may have an item that is contentious and you have varying groups that'll turn out. What we've done in the past in Knox County, when I served on commission, we would ask that group to appoint a spokesperson. And then we would limit the time of debate. So all of those restrictions are still in place and they're able to manage those.
Representative Warner for follow-up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, sponsor, for the bill.
Next on our list is Representative Eldridge.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Representative Davis, you and I talked about this a little bit.
Yes, sir.
We're both recovering county commissioners. and Hamlin, the district that I represent, Hamlin and Granger County, we've always had a public comment for items on the agenda. And at the end of the meeting, as you just said with Knox County, we always allotted time for people to speak on any issue that they had that they were dealing with. As someone that's elected, I think it's incumbent upon you to do that. But where my problem comes in, and I know we codified public comment, but I just have an issue with saying to my locals, you've got to do this. They should want to do it. And just because you're making them listen, they're probably still not hearing. And that would be my thing. I won't be supporting the bill today, but I do understand what you're trying to do and what you're trying to accomplish. And it shouldn't be that we should have to tell any county or city government or school board, listen to your folks at home. They should be doing that anyway. Thank you.
Before I recognize Representative Davis for a comment, committee members, if you could, we've got a large committee, very large, and we're all spread out. So if you have a follow-up question or whatever, make sure to raise your hand high enough for me to see it or look at me or, well, let's make a connection because I'm having a hard time seeing everybody here. So do you have a follow-up, Representative Eldridge? Okay. Representative Davis, you're recognized.
And thank you, Representative. I appreciate you coming and talking to me and our dialogue. And I understand. I really don't want to be here having to present this. I think that just like I mentioned earlier, 99.9% are doing it absolutely correctly and going above and beyond. But unfortunately, I've had some folks ever since this has passed reach out to me and say that they're struggling to be heard. And I think it's important that we adhere to our First Amendment and our right to redress our government.
All right. Next on the list, Representative Powell.
Thank you. My concern here with this bill is, and I understand, that members and whatever topic is taken up, they have to speak to the agenda. But when you're talking about the public and a public comment and someone coming to speak, I always want to be cognizant of the fact that I represent a district where a lot of my constituents rely on public transportation. They might not be able to take off from work to be able to attend a meeting at a given time that's set by council. I know a lot of games are played with rolling different things and putting things off. So my concern here is limiting the ability for the public to come and speak when they know that they might not be able to attend that next meeting or a future meeting where that issue is being discussed, but they still want to make sure that their voice is heard. And so I think when you do something like this, you are stifling the voice of the people, and that is something I don't think we should ever do in this body. So that is my main concern here is, and I get that there are certain guardrails that need to be put in place, but recognizing the fact that the public can't always come, always really appreciate people in our audience here that take the time to come up here and be heard. And, oftentimes they'll come all the way up here and what we said we're going to take up, we're getting ready to roll a bunch of bills here. They're not going to get to speak on it. They might not be able to come back next week. So that's my main concern. If you could address that, I'd appreciate it.
Representative Davis.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think that that's important. And that's one of the reasons why I'm wanting to make sure that they have the ability to speak to items that are under that purview of that committee or that governing body. So that way, right now, currently in law, it's limited to the agenda items only. But just like you said, if there is someone that has something that's important issue to them that they need to be able to speak to, that might be the only time that they're able to get a babysitter. And so, or like you said, have any sort of accommodations to get off work. And so it gives them the ability to speak to an issue that is important and that potentially they may be taking action on in the future. And so the language of this bill is that they can speak to an item that is germane to that governing body, not just limited to the agenda. Does that make sense?
Committee, before we recognize Powell, we got about 3 minutes. So just making you aware, and we'll have to clear the room. Representative Powell, you're recognized.
And one thing, there was a very important discussion that happened at my local school board concerning magnet schools, where it was done at a retreat and the public wasn't given notice, and all of a sudden that became like the main topic. And they completely changed the way the magnet schools operate in the city of Nashville, I think to the detriment of the entire city. And restricted diversity in our schools. So I also have exceptions and issues with sometimes these agendas have become a little bit loosey-goosey as far as how open or so closed they can be. And then the people are given broad latitude as what they can discuss. And I think that should be tightened up too. So that's something else, if you could speak to that, how your bill might address that.
Representative Davis.
Thank you. So just like I read, that's currently in statute, however they register to sign up, they can, that chairman or that whoever's in charge of the sign up can specifically ask those individuals, what topic are you here to speak to? And it might be something that they may able to resolve. Like if it's an issue that maybe they need to be referred to the Department of Engineering, it might be a constituent issue that can be resolved and they may not even need to come to public comment. And so, but what we're wanting to do is to ensure that people have an opportunity to redress their government and to be able to bring those issues forward that may never get listed on an agenda.
Representative Martin.
I move the previous question.
Previous question's been called. We're ready to vote on House Bill 22. Moving on to calendar and rules. All those in favor vote yes on the board or no. If you're against, Madam Clerk, open the board for voting. Has every member voted? Does any member wish to change their vote? Madam Clerk, close the vote, close the board and announce the vote.
Mr. Chairman, you have 14 ayes, 7 nays.
With a positive vote, you will move on to calendar and rules.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, committee.
All right, folks, I apologize. We got through as many as we could. All the bills that we have left on today's agenda will be rolled to next week's calendar. Without objection, we'll roll them to next week's calendar. I will entertain a motion to adjourn. So moved, we are adjourned.